in an environment.
Alright, good
And
afternoon, Earth. This is Adam
ideas,
Sturch broadcasting from the
the
Mushroom
most
Mansion Taos, New
fitting
Mexico,
ideas
working
for
on
the
oil
human
painting digital allegory.
adventure
Alright, today, before I
will,
dig into dinosaur detail, I'm just going to increase the glow
eliminate their
of all the
competition.
existing colors and
And
add a
that's
little
what we're
bit more purple
experiencing
to this
now
wall, which was completely
in the
obscured
political
by the
domain,
deep
is the
blue rhythms,
competition
which I
between,
like. But I do want to
ideological
have a
systems
light
roughly
translucent
comparable
white
to
glow
dinosaurs and
reinforced
mammals.
around the
And,
glowing
you can
screen,
decide which
purple on
is
the
which,
walls,
but
redo the
two
orange.
are incommensurate, and
And what
one
else
is
did I
in
get
the
out
act
today?
of eliminating the other.
I think that's about
And
all I
so
have set up
it's a
for the
matter
moment,
of
but I'll see how
observing
far
this
or how much
process,
time that takes
understanding
and
it,
go from there.
and
There we
being
go.
comfortable with it. If you're right, I don't think you need to feel any urgency, because that will quite naturally percolate out in the mix. Many of you have heard me quote William Blake. It's always worth repeating. He said, if the truth can be told so as to be understood, it will be believed. In other words, understanding compels belief. You don't have to hammer on somebody. Your task is to refine your message into an understandable form, and then let the dynamics of intellectual competition decide what is the best model to follow. Yeah.
I had a question related to what you were just saying, and then I had a chemistry question. What keeps me optimistic is that information seems to be spreading more rapidly. Some futurists have said that by the year 2011, that information will be doubling every second. I was wondering if you could comment on that.
Well, yeah. I mean, part of what I was going to talk about last night and didn't get to is I'm the purveyor of a very formal mathematical theory about how history unfolds itself and what time is. And to your great good fortune, you're not going to be exposed to this today. Had we 2 days, I would flay you with it on the second day. But here's the thing that's going on. Since the very first moments of the universe's existence, novelty, as I call it, or complexity, as someone else has called it, or connectedness, has been increasing. So that the early universe was very simple. It was a plasma of free electrons. There were no laws of molecular physics, still less laws of biology or gene segregation or something like that. As the universe has aged, it has become more and more complex. We represent the culmination to the present moment of that process. Well, I don't think that's particularly big news. It's sort of a stating of the obvious that the universe has grown more complex through time. But what is interesting is that each advancement into complexity that has built on the previously established foundation of complexity occurs more rapidly than the stages which preceded it. So if you were to draw a diagram of that, it would be an involuting spiral, so that after the Big Bang and things settle down after the first few nanoseconds of the universe's existence, well then for a long time it was very boring. And all that happened was the temperatures fell very gradually. Eventually they fell to the point where atoms could settle down into stable orbits around nuclei. And then, as the temperature fell still further, eventually these atoms could aggregate into molecular structures. Again, each advancement into novelty proceeding more rapidly than the stage which preceded it. Well, that's why, to my mind, human history is not a radical break with primate biology. It simply represents an acceleration of primate behavior into a more compacted temporal domain. And high technology, electronic data transfer, the erection of global society, which has built on the previous levels of cultural attainment, has happened even more quickly. So that these eras, or epochs, you could almost think of them as, of complexity, are now of such short duration that instead of taking millions of years, or perhaps billions of years, to transit through one of these, we now are moving through them at the rate of one or two a decade, and beyond that, one or two every 2 or 3 years, and beyond that, one or two every few months. And I see no elegant reason for assuming that this process will ever cease its asymptotic acceleration. Well, then if you picture what I'm describing, it's a funnel of some sort, which begins with an extremely wide mouth, but which has now narrowed to an extremely small and fast-moving kind of situation. And this is why history is a self-limiting process. It isn't that we have broken away from the slow-moving processes of ordinary nature. It's that we represent nature at a different time frame. And I think this is why history is ending, because it's going so much faster than it used to go that it's going to finish very soon. There may be as much experience ahead of us as there is behind us, but we're moving through it so much faster than we used to that we are literally approaching the end of time at a faster and faster speed. And this is something built into the structure of the cosmos. It's the answer to the question, where did we come from? We were called forth out of biological organization by the continued acceleration of the expression of novelty. And this is why I count myself as a proponent of what I call the big surprise rather than the big bang. The big surprise lies ahead of us, not billions of years or millions of years or thousands of years in the future, but within our lifetimes, potentially. And it's interesting that, I think I said this last night, the people who run the world now possess curves which, when they draw these curves and try to extrapolate them 50 years into the future, it makes no sense at all. You cannot extrapolate the ozone hole, the AIDS epidemic, the spread of plutonium. You cannot extrapolate these things 100 years into the future because they all go asymptotic and reach infinity. So it means the oceans boil, the atmosphere blows off, everybody dies, and that's the end of it. But I don't think that's what's happening. I think novelty is the saving grace, and that the historical adventure is essentially coming into the finale of the third act, and it is our great good fortune to be spectators and participants in the phenomena that for all preceding generations could only be anticipated and prayed for. It's a screwy position, I understand. I mean, it boiled down to a bumper sticker. It's a bearded guy on the corner with a sign which says, "Repent, for the end is nigh," or maybe just, "The end is nigh." But I think all the evidence is that the soul is about to collectively leave the body. The human imagination, married to technology, has become a force too powerful to be unleashed within the fragile ecosystem of this planet. So we must either carry ourselves elsewhere, or the planet's homeostatic drive to preserve ordinary biology will eliminate us through epidemic disease or climatological upheaval, or, there are many possibilities. So I think we are being propelled somewhat reluctantly into a new human modality that is as radical a shift as birth is to the individual, or as the original entry into history was for our species. History cannot be conceived of as preceding another 1,000 or 10,000 years. I mean, it just can't be. So it must be that it's a self-limiting process. And it only lasts 25,000 years. I mean, if you go back 25,000 years, the Earth was in ecodynamic balance. Human beings were fully established, as intelligent, as caring, as creative as you and I. Theater, poetry, dance, love, hope, tragedy, religion, all these things were in place. But history represents Gaia hitting the fast forward button on the evolution of the primates, and it seems of long duration to us because we, at the level of the expression of the individual phenotype, are as ephemeral as mayflies. A person lives 70 years, 90 years, and then they're gone. But on a scale of 25,000 years, clearly what is happening on this planet is the emergence of an entirely new kind of order within the natural order. It is natural, but it is new. There is no contradiction in this. Once atoms were a new invention. Once molecules were a new invention. Once polymers were the cutting edge of what's happening. Now, the cutting edge of what's happening is large-scale, primate, machine-integrated societies based on the movement of information. Did that do it? Yeah. Oh, you want to follow on?
No.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry.
Is 5-methyl-oxy-NN-dimethyltryptamine crystalline legal to possess? And if one was going to mix it with harmine, harmello, heroline, or harmaline?
That was a word salad. Well, I think you're asking about 5-MeO-DMT, 5-methoxy-dimethyltryptamine, the toad foam of recent fame. As far as I understand, I think that it's legal. However, it would probably depend on the length of the fangs of the local DA, because there is what's called the Kogener law, which says that structural near relatives of hallucinogens can also be prosecuted as illegal compounds. As far as the question about the harmine alkaloids, harmine, harmaline, tetrahydroharman, harmello, I think is apocryphal, specious. But the notion which must lie behind your question is harmine alkaloids inhibit monoamine oxidase, which is an enzyme system in the human gut that tends to inactivate amines, monoamines, of which these hallucinogens almost all fall into that category. You could attempt to inhibit your MAO with a dose of harmine or harmaline, and then smoke 5-MeO-DMT. But I don't recommend this unless you are a pharmacologist with hours and hours of psychedelic flight time on your log. I mean, this is certainly nothing for the ingenue to attempt. once you get out into the realm of synergies, that means what happens when you run two metabolically active compounds at the same time, and some people do 3 and 4 and 5, you're definitely on your own, because pharmacology doesn't study drugs like that. They study them in isolation, their activity. And, some people say of the smokable tryptamines, they're so quick that wouldn't it be logical to inhibit your MAO in order to freeze frame the experience, and instead of having it last 3 minutes, have it last 30 minutes. Yes, that's a fine idea, but what if it lasted 30 hours instead? I mean, you don't, a miss is as good as a mile in this game, so you should have your mantras ready if you push off into that. Yeah.
Quick and easy question. Okay, I imagine psilocybin is probably pretty common use, and I'm sure that people around here are pretty aware of the malacthyon spraying going on. I've always been curious. I'm not a chemistry student, but since psilocybin does have a phosphorus in it, and I know most of the malacthyon and most of the other chemicals like it are organophosphates, and they react synergistically. Is there a possibility of a synergistic toxicity when you get, a dose of malacthyon and you're using psilocybin?
Well, every once in a while these kinds of questions come along, and the answer is always, since research with psilocybin is illegal, and even in rats,
All right,
counterproductive to your career, nobody
Mission
knows.
accomplished with increasing the glow. We've got the TV screen happening. The purple is a little brighter, and the inner landscape orange glow is a lot nicer. Got some detail into the heart veining, and went ahead and increased the glow around the edges of the dark heart.
Indole in nature on this planet. The only 4 substituted
But I think that does it for the moment. After that sets up, we'll start with dinosaur detail and figure detail and other elements that may go into the inner landscape. But that's it for the moment. So thanks for watching. It's Adam Sturch broadcasting from the Mushroom Mansion Taos, Mexico, working on oil painting digital allegory. Have a good night, Earth.